For years, Katt Williams positioned himself as one of the few voices in comedy willing to openly challenge what he believed was happening behind the scenes in the entertainment industry. From interviews and red carpets to court appearances and stand-up stages, he repeatedly tried to draw attention to what he described as a hidden structure of control within Hollywood. Each time, however, his claims were largely dismissed, ridiculed, or overshadowed by legal troubles and headlines about his personal life. Over time, a public narrative formed around him, one that painted him as volatile, unpredictable, and unreliable. Arrests, altercations, and controversies were repeatedly highlighted, reinforcing the idea that his statements should not be taken seriously. But beneath that surface, Williams continued to articulate a consistent message in interviews that often went viral only briefly before being forgotten. At the center of his argument was the idea that fame comes with an unseen cost. According to Williams, success in entertainment is not just about talent or money, but about what he described as a loss of autonomy, dignity, and personal integrity. He suggested that there are unspoken expectations within the industry, informal rules that determine who is elevated, protected, or sidelined. He also claimed that certain opportunities and levels of access are conditioned on compliance with those unwritten expectations. While he rarely laid out specifics in a direct or verifiable way, he consistently insisted that the industry operates through a system of gatekeeping and silent agreements that outsiders rarely see. In some of his more controversial appearances, Williams referenced broader ideas of organized influence and control within entertainment circles, suggesting that those who speak too openly face professional and personal consequences. His framing led many critics to dismiss him outright, while supporters viewed him as someone repeatedly punished for speaking candidly about uncomfortable dynamics. Supporters of his perspective point to the pattern of how he was treated publicly: the focus on legal issues, headlines about instability, and repeated framing of him as a figure of ridicule, as part of why his broader message never gained mainstream traction. At the same time, similar themes of power, access, and secrecy have appeared in wider cultural conversations about Hollywood, the music industry, and elite social networks. These discussions often reference how influence can shape careers and silence dissent, even when no single explanation is universally agreed upon. Within that context, Williams' comments are sometimes re-examined not as literal claims, but as part of a larger pattern of skepticism toward how the entertainment industry operates behind its public image. Ultimately, his perspective has remained controversial and widely debated, embraced by some as insight into hidden industry dynamics, and rejected by others as speculation shaped by personal experience and conflict. Dave Chappelle has repeatedly pushed back against the idea that his critiques of the entertainment industry are tied to conspiracy theories or secret societies. Instead, he frames his perspective in more grounded terms: not hidden cabals in the shadows, but systems of power built on access, influence, and unspoken expectations. From that viewpoint, what he describes is not a mystical organization, but a structure with a simple logic: opportunities are offered, but they come with conditions. Refusal of those conditions, in his framing, can carry consequences that are paid in career setbacks, isolation, or lost opportunities rather than direct rewards. Years later, when legal troubles and federal indictments involving figures like Sean Diddy Combs began making headlines, older conversations from comedians like Katt Williams resurfaced with new attention. Williams had long used stand-up comedy to describe what he saw as layered environments within the industry, glamorous public spaces that often concealed more private, compartmentalized interactions behind closed doors. He described large mansion gatherings where the main event was visible to everyone, but separate rooms within the same space operated differently, with different rules and dynamics. While delivered through humor, the underlying idea was a split structure, a public-facing celebration layered over more private, inaccessible circles within the same environment. In hindsight, some observers began re-examining those descriptions alongside civil lawsuits and allegations emerging from entertainment and music industries. They argue that the metaphor of multiple rooms within one party mirrors claims made in various legal cases about hidden conduct occurring alongside public-facing events. Terrence Howard's departure from Hollywood also became part of this broader discussion. Howard, once an Academy Award-nominated actor known for major roles in films like Iron Man and the series Empire, later spoke about stepping away from aspects of the industry despite his level of success. He has described his decision in terms of personal boundaries and integrity, suggesting that remaining in the system required compromises he was unwilling to continue making. In his framing, it was not simply a career choice, but a refusal to accept what he viewed as a deeper trade tied to identity and self-respect. In conversations with interviewer Patrick Bet-David, Howard emphasized that once certain lines are crossed or certain choices are made, there is no return to the previous version of oneself, a point he repeated as a central reason for stepping back. He also recounted experiences involving Sean Combs, describing repeated attempts to arrange private one-on-one meetings initially presented as professional collaboration, such as acting guidance or music-related discussions. According to Howard's account, those invitations were persistent and unclear in purpose, eventually prompting confusion and concern within his team. Within this broader narrative, supporters of these claims interpret them as examples of how access, proximity, and opportunity in the entertainment industry can sometimes blur the boundaries between professional networking and more opaque personal dynamics. Others, however, view them as subjective interpretations shaped by personal experiences rather than evidence of a coordinated system. As a result, these stories continue to circulate within public discourse as part of a larger and highly contested conversation about power, influence, and the hidden pressures that may exist behind the entertainment industry's polished exterior. Sean Diddy Combs has long denied wrongdoing, and multiple legal matters involving him are still moving through the courts. Within that ongoing legal context, various claims and interpretations circulating in public discourse remain allegations rather than established findings. Terrence Howard, however, has described his own experiences in the industry in a very different way. In his account, certain professional opportunities began with what appeared to be legitimate collaboration, such as discussions framed around acting guidance or music-related projects, but, according to him, those meetings often shifted into unclear or unexpected personal settings. Howard's central claim is not presented as speculation but as personal testimony. He says he chose not to participate in what he perceived as compromising situations, and that this refusal had consequences for his career trajectory. In his view, after declining repeated invitations, work opportunities diminished, industry contact faded, and his presence in major projects gradually declined. Supporters of this interpretation often connect his story to a broader idea discussed in entertainment commentary, that the industry rewards conformity and punishes refusal. Katt Williams and others have echoed similar themes in interviews and stand-up performances, describing Hollywood as a place where success may depend on navigating unspoken expectations and maintaining access to powerful circles. Howard extends that argument beyond himself, suggesting that some performers who accept those environments experience lasting psychological strain. He has referenced well-known artists, including Justin Bieber, pointing to public struggles with mental health as part of what he sees as the hidden cost of fame. Bieber has independently spoken about anxiety, depression, and the intense pressures of growing up in the spotlight, though any direct link between those struggles and Howard's interpretation remains unproven and speculative. Howard's broader point is that fame, in his view, can come with internal consequences that are not visible to the public, particularly for artists who enter the industry very young and are surrounded by powerful adults responsible for guiding their careers. Some legal cases and civil lawsuits in the entertainment world have also alleged inappropriate environments involving young performers, though each case is specific and varies in scope and outcome. Katt Williams, meanwhile, has expressed similar ideas through comedy rather than testimony. In various performances, he has criticized recurring patterns in Hollywood culture, including the frequent use of black male comedians in roles that involve cross-dressing for comedic effect. He questions who makes these creative decisions and why they appear so consistently across decades of film and television. Importantly, Williams frames these observations as commentary on industry patterns rather than specific accusations against individual actors. For example, Kevin Hart has never been credibly linked to the implications sometimes misattributed to Williams' broader critique. Instead, Williams' argument focuses on systemic creative choices and what he perceives as a repeated formula for shaping careers in entertainment. Taken together, these overlapping perspectives, from Howard's personal testimony to Williams' comedic commentary, reflect a wider debate about power, access, and influence in Hollywood. Some interpret these stories as evidence of deeper structural issues, while others view them as subjective experiences shaped by individual careers and interpretations of a highly competitive industry. If you take these accounts at face value, what they are really offering is not isolated stories but a kind of pattern recognition from people who say they spent years inside the entertainment machine. The underlying question that emerges is simple. If this pattern is real, what kind of structure would be required to sustain it? Because none of it would function on reputation alone. It would need coordination, networks of people, overlapping interests, informal agreements, and systems of access that go beyond any single artist or executive. In that framing, figures like Sean Diddy Combs become part of a broader conversation about how influence and proximity operate within music and entertainment culture. Rapper 50 Cent has, for years, publicly criticized Combs and the environment around him, often long before legal scrutiny intensified. His commentary, however, has largely focused not on direct accusations of criminal conduct, but on what he describes as a discomfort with the social atmosphere surrounding certain invitations and gatherings. In his view, the tone and structure of those interactions were enough to signal that he did not want to be involved. From that perspective, the argument becomes less about proving specific events and more about interpreting behavior and environment, reading the vibe, as he has described it, and choosing to stay outside of it. Supporters of this interpretation suggest that avoidance itself can be a form of testimony, a recognition that something in the culture felt off enough to disengage completely. Terrence Howard has framed the issue in broader terms, describing what he sees as a culture of complicity within entertainment. In his view, it is not always about direct participation in wrongdoing, but about passive acceptance, remaining in environments where questionable dynamics are normalized and rarely challenged. In this framing, complicity is not defined by criminal acts but by participation through silence, convenience, or benefit. It can look like attending events, accepting invitations, or continuing relationships without questioning the underlying systems that enable them. Critics of the industry argue that this kind of normalization is what allows problematic structures to persist over time. At the same time, there are also examples of high-profile figures who stepped away from Hollywood at the height of their success. Dave Chappelle is often cited in this context. At the peak of Chappelle's show, he walked away from a massive financial deal and left the United States for a period, a decision that puzzled much of the public and media at the time. In a widely discussed interview with Oprah Winfrey, Chappelle explained his departure using metaphor rather than direct accusation. He referenced situations involving other performers whose careers were followed by intense personal or public crises, using those examples to illustrate his belief that sudden success can come with destabilizing pressure and loss of control. He compared his own experience to a fable about a monkey reaching into a container to grab something valuable and becoming trapped by refusing to let go. In his interpretation, the reward becomes the very thing that prevents escape, and letting go is the only way to avoid being caught in the system. Within this interpretation, Chappelle's decision to walk away is often framed as a conscious refusal to remain in an environment he no longer trusted. Katt Williams is similarly cited by supporters of this narrative as someone who has long criticized industry norms, while Terrence Howard is presented as another figure who ultimately chose distance over continued participation. Taken together, these stories are often grouped as different expressions of a shared idea, that success in entertainment may come with invisible trade-offs tied to access, compliance, and proximity to power. Whether viewed as literal truth or subjective interpretation, they form a recurring theme in discussions about how the industry operates behind its public image. From there, the conversation is often expanded beyond entertainment alone. If similar dynamics exist anywhere power and influence concentrate, then the same questions would naturally extend into other high-access environments as well, which is where broader comparisons, including cases like Jeffrey Epstein's network, are often brought into the discussion. Joe Rogan has spent a significant amount of time in recent years discussing the Epstein case on his podcast, often framing it less as an isolated crime story and more as evidence of a broader system of influence and compromise. In his conversations with various guests, the recurring idea is that powerful people can be compromised and then quietly controlled through that leverage. In that view, Epstein's operation is sometimes described not just as the actions of one individual, but as part of a larger mechanism, one where access to luxury environments, elite social gatherings, and private spaces could be used to gather compromising material on influential figures. The theory suggests that once someone is placed in a vulnerable or compromising situation, their behavior alone can become a form of leverage. The tension between the public denial and the reported paper trail is part of what has fueled broader skepticism among commentators who follow the case closely. For some, these discrepancies are used to support the idea that the Epstein network may have operated in ways that were not fully acknowledged publicly, though these remain allegations and interpretations rather than proven conclusions. Within this wider discussion, Virginia Giuffre remains one of the most central figures. She was among the first to publicly accuse Jeffrey Epstein and individuals in his circle of abuse, and she played a key role in bringing wider attention to the case. Giuffre stated that she was trafficked as a teenager after being recruited from employment at Mar-a-Lago and later identified Prince Andrew in widely circulated photographs as part of her account. Giuffre's death in 2025 at the age of 41 was widely reported and marked a significant moment in the public narrative surrounding the Epstein case. Many of Epstein's other accusers remain anonymous or bound by non-disclosure agreements, meaning that their full accounts and identities are not publicly known. In parallel, Terrence Howard has also been cited in broader cultural commentary about the entertainment industry and elite networks. He has described situations in which he believes he narrowly avoided involvement in certain circles, including associations he connects to Epstein-related environments. He has suggested that, at the time, exclusion from those spaces felt confusing or even professionally limiting, before later interpreting it differently in hindsight. During public discussions involving law enforcement figures, questions have also been raised about the existence of unreleased or unverified material related to Epstein's activities. In some interviews, officials have responded cautiously or ambiguously when asked about specific evidence, including alleged recordings or videos connected to Epstein's properties, without confirming details. These gaps in information, combined with ongoing debates about sealed documents, redactions, and incomplete disclosures, continue to fuel public speculation about the full extent of what has not yet been made available. In this broader narrative, commentators like Joe Rogan, Katt Williams, and others are often grouped together by audiences analyzing patterns across different industries. Their shared perspective, as interpreted by supporters, is that entertainment, business, and celebrity culture may operate on unspoken systems of access, reward, and exclusion that are not always visible to the public. Katt Williams, in particular, has summarized his critique of the entertainment world in more abstract terms, arguing that industries built on performance and image can blur the line between reality and presentation. In that framing, what appears to be spontaneous success or failure may actually reflect deeper structural dynamics behind the scenes. Whether viewed as insight, metaphor, or speculation, these overlapping claims continue to circulate as part of a larger and unresolved conversation about power, influence, and transparency in high-profile industries.